The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
Peter Boyles. The Peter Boyle Show. 630 KHOW. Denver's talk station.
Born to be mild, 4 minutes after 6:04. Good morning on a Friday. Radio Free Denver, 630 KHW, 51 the high. It is doing this rain, snow thing, but it's going to make the lawns green, the grass grow, flowers will come out. Before we go to Jack Cashill, ladies and gentlemen, billionaire Donald Trump, whose name has been surging past lesser knowns, rumored eligibility, GOP's 2012 presidential nominee, has reason to wonder about Barack Obama. Wolfie, if you would.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
And to that controversial question, does he believe the president was born in the USA?
Everybody that even gives any hint of being a birther, a word you didn't use, even a little bit of a hint like, gee, you know, maybe, just maybe this much of a chance, they label them as an idiot. Let me tell you, I'm a really smart guy. I was a really good student at the best school in the country. The reason I have a little doubt, just a little, is because he grew up and nobody knew him. When you interview people, if I ever got the nomination, if I ever decide to run, you may go back and interview people from my kindergarten. They'll remember me. Nobody ever comes forward. Nobody knows who he is until later in his life. It's very strange. The whole thing is very strange.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
5 minutes after the hour, ladies and gentlemen, please say good morning. Welcome back. He's done some of the best work on the story. His name is Jack Cashill, American thinker and, of course, WorldNet, in his book, Deconstructing Obama. Well, there's the Donald. That was pretty interesting, wasn't it, Jack?
Yeah, I guess when you have that much money, you can say whatever you feel like
Yeah,
saying.
he's the one guy. What does he care, right?
Right, exactly. I think they call that FU money in some parts of the world.
Drop dead money, that's right.
Right.
Yeah, I thought it was classy, man. He's the first of very high-profile people not to do a Chris Matthews or jump up and down and scream and say you can't ask the question like the rest of them. I thought it was a brilliant moment.
No, it's a breakthrough, and I hope he inspires his fellow candidates, if he is indeed a candidate, to show a little sand, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I mean, I watched, we haven't spoken since that NPR video came out where that idiot woman sitting there, and we're not going to talk about the birthers, that's just, but she's appalled or shocked that over 51% of the American people don't buy the story.
Right.
That has
no, and it's good to see Congress making some moves to defund NPR.
Yeah, I mean the whole thing is just kind of it starts to come home to roost. You have done along with some other investigators the long hard look at the president's SSN. Jack, if you would.
Well, you know, because I had in my book in Deconstructing Obama, I don't talk about the Social Security number, and partly because it wasn't on topic, but in the course of being on the radio or talking about the book, people asked me about the Social Security number, so I said I better find out about this. So what I like to do, Peter, is to go to the source. I mean, I like to track the story down and to see how it started, who started it, and how credible are those people. And my inquiry led me to a woman named Susan Daniels, who is has a great personal story, and that is that when she was 30 years old, her husband died. She left her with 7 small children. And she went back to school eventually, became a paralegal, then became in Ohio, where she lived. You have to have a license to become an investigator, and it takes certain, coursework, this and that. And so she's been independently working as a licensed investigator for the last 15 years. She typically works for law firms, and her specialty is asset location, finding out where the money is. And she knows her way around the databases, and she has access to databases that you and I don't. And so when Obama first started getting squirrely after he was elected, she was very disconcerted, and she started saying, I wonder what we know about his background. And she came across the fact that he was using a Connecticut Social Security number. Now, Social Security numbers are historically, anyhow, that may not be true now, but they were allocated geographically, and his starts with the numbers 042. And she was able to track the people both before and after him numerically. Both came from Connecticut. The one guy, she has his application because he died when he was 19, and she sent it to me, a copy of his handwritten application. and he lives in, I think it was Newfield, Connecticut. Same age as Obama. I mean, that makes sense because at that time you'd get a Social Security number when you first needed it to work. And this was issued between 1977 and 79 was the allowable range for that. So the question is, why does Obama have a Connecticut Social Security number, since he obviously never visited that state until probably he was a presidential candidate, and certainly has no connection to that state. And that's basically what I started looking into.
And the President of the United States' SSN is 042684425. Who does that belong to?
That's a good question. It's certainly been used by him. Now, there is some speculation, and this is where Susan Daniels was useful, because what's happened is that once the story got out, she said that sort of amateur investigators got in there and started finding all kinds of numbers and attributing them to Barack Obama and speculating on how it's used. But there is a date associated with that on the card, and it's 1890. And there's a person, this gets complicated, and it's not entirely clear to me, but this person died and Obama assumed the number, but because she cannot say that with certainty, so she doesn't want to go there. But what she will say with some certainty is that when he was a student at Occidental, and this would have been about 1979 to 1980, he was using a different Social Security number. So there's at least two different Social Security numbers associated with his name. And then the question becomes, is there an innocent explanation? And if not, what's the most likely way he got a hold of this card?
Has anyone contacted the family of the Thomas Wood, the 19-year-old who is believed to be the original owner of the number, or issued number?
Well, Wood is actually the guy with the number before Obama. See that? And Susan tells me that she could get specific information because he's dead. And, he died at 19, in fact. So the number is available. It's accessible. The number that Obama has, that is more mysterious. And that is, there is every time she says that some number is floated or some information is floated, and what she's done is kept a couple of bits of information to herself, because as soon as that number is, that information is put online, there is a move made to counter it and shut down that information source.
Right, yeah. Well, that happens all the time now with this story.
Yeah. And, so that, what I was intrigued by, because, Peter, when you look at usually what I go about is try to disprove a story. I want to find out what the best information the other side can throw up. What happens is a story like this breaks, and then the Media Matters or some other entity, Huffington Post or whatever, will come forward and say, no, this is impossible because, and then as this case, they call them interplanetary monkeys or something.
Something, yeah, I saw, yeah.
So here, but the excuses they put forward are utterly lame.
No, but that's...
The one, for instance, and this was in a Yahoo-related blog called Associated Content, the woman says, well, this is no big deal because Obama's father went to college in Connecticut, and it's probably, and while Obama was on a spring trip visiting his father's alma mater, he could have applied there.
Sure.
The only matters is where it's postmarked from. Well, except that his father went to Harvard, and the last time I looked, that was in Massachusetts.
We have a phone call that some guy says that's where he got it. I said, wait a minute, his father went to Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And when his father went to Massachusetts, he was an infant. He was the old man graduates, and if, as some people speculate, if he is the dad, and he's off to Harvard. And in the meantime, that's before. This one makes the story so bizarre. The mom and the baby don't come back to the Rock, as they say, until Senior is well on his way or in Massachusetts already.
Right, in the closest part of Connecticut to Massachusetts is about 90 minutes from Harvard. There's no record of him having lived.
And it's like Senior really cared, right? Like he was around when the baby was born and the rest of it. I mean, he didn't care. No,
exactly. Plus, what was even stupider is that the woman who writing this article, he went to college. It says Obama Senior went to college in Connecticut, as though Harvard were in Connecticut. Yeah. And it just so happened that when he was an adolescent, Obama was visiting that college, because his father went there.
But that never happened.
And then applied at that time.
Yeah, never. But it never happened. The numbers are assigned by state, and we've been through this. And with the exception of a couple of guys that tried to claim some other state, it's 100%. It's 100% foolproof. I mean, you have the number, and we've been over this. We did it a couple of days in a row. You give me your number, I'll tell you where you registered.
Right.
And it's foolproof. I mean, it just doesn't. It won't. I guess next year or sometime this summer it goes random. But prior to that, from the beginning with FDR, it was by state.
Yeah.
And so, how does the man have his number begins 042?
Right.
How in the hell does he have an 042? That the first time that they can find is in what, 1980?
Yeah, the first time, and this is interesting.
How about this, Jack? Let me do this. Let me break, sell something, and come back. Traffic time. Jack Cashill, Deconstructing Obama, the fraudulent use of an SSN. Traffic time. Here's Susan.
Hey guys, Sheik here. Attention all card-carrying members of any Native American tribe. This urgent message is for you. The federal government has approved millions of dollars of funding that only you qualify for. If you're considering purchasing a home or refinancing your mortgage, cardholders can qualify for a special government loan program that offers low rates, low down payments, and the best part, no monthly mortgage insurance. That means lower monthly house payments. Ideal credit or little to no credit with loan amounts up to $544,000. This plan beats every mortgage plan out there, but it's available to cardholders only. Government funding for this program is limited, so call the specialists at Gateway Mortgage Group today at 303-803-1890. That's 303-803-1890, or visit nativeamericanloans.net. Gateway Mortgage Group has people standing by right now to help process your loans quickly and hassle-free. Don't wait. Get the government benefits you deserve before funding runs out. Call 303-803-1890. That's 303-803-1890, or visit nativeamericanloans.net.
Thank you, America. For over 70 years, Geico has been saving people money on car insurance, and because of you, they've been the nation's fastest-growing car insurance company over the past 5 years. To show our appreciation, call within the next 15 minutes and you could save hundreds on your car insurance. This is not a limited-time offer, and okay, actually you could call whenever you like. But why are we even arguing about this, America?
For a free rate quote, visit geico.com or call 1-800-947-AUTO. 15 minutes could save you hundreds on car insurance.
20 after 6, 6:20, 51 the high today. Rain, snow mix in the city right now. A number of twists and turns and new information on the President of the United States and the fraudulent use of an SSN number and the truth about the constitutional eligibility of Barack Obama. None better than Jack Cashill. His book, Deconstructing Obama, is a home run. He was scheduled to be on Fox and Friends this morning, and because of the problems in Japan, he got bumped, and he's kind enough to be with us. His book is certainly worth your time, Deconstructing Obama. We're kind of chuckling a little bit off air that Donald Trump, who's been an interesting guy in owning professional sports teams and, and all of his television shows, always is, very open to African Americans being involved in everything. This morning, he's a racist. I guess that's the only thing that can be said, huh?
That's the last refuge of scoundrels today is the accusation of racism.
Yeah. I mean, I'm cracking up. I'm reading the CNN website, and I thought, all the times that you've seen Trump, I'm not a big Trump fan, but now suddenly this morning, Donald Trump is a racist because he asks the questions that I guess greater than 50% of the American people are asking. So it's amazing.
Now, when I have some personal experiences, because when I started, I did a book TV presentation, which airs this weekend, in fact, 3 different times. So just check your schedule on C-SPAN too. But when I was to do it at the Kansas City Public Library, the local wrestling alternative paper started a racist, Jack's a racist campaign and demanding the library stop the event. Right? Yeah. And the library came very close to buckling. Yeah. And we had 350 people there. My fellow racists were there. It's on my the video. It's on my website, Cashill.com, or you can just look at go to the watch your TV this weekend. But there's nothing racist about this. It's simply telling the truth about a president. I mean, that's the truth telling about presidents been going on since George Washington.
Yeah, but this is what this political correct beer goggle incredible belief of how the world operates, that if you ask the right question, you become a racist. So
Yeah.
you were telling something, and we broke away for the commercial, Jack, if you would.
Yeah, what I was saying is that in the historical, and this is in regard to the Social Security number and its application to the Selective Service Card of Barack Obama. The Social Security number first surfaces Obama's in 1980 registration for Obama's Selective Service Card. Now, the only trick with that is that there are people who've been investigating this, and I can't say this authoritatively, but I think they have a case, because Susan Daniels, the woman I alluded to earlier, believes they have a case, is that the card was applied for retroactively once Obama became a presidential candidate, and that they finessed the record so that he would have one. Otherwise, the next use of that card, the Connecticut Social Security number, doesn't occur until 1986, after Obama's in Chicago. And then I went back into fugitive days, Bill Ayers' memoir, and he talked at length about how they would create false identities. And he said the surest way to create a false identity was through the use of Social Security numbers. That was the best way to build a whole new legend for yourself. And it's not to say that Ayers and Obama conspired to do this, but it's a possible explanation, because they were both in Chicago at the same time. They're both in New York before that at the same time, at Columbia.
One of the beliefs is that the president, because he thought that he could either play the whole card of a Kenyan or a Indonesian or whatever he tried to play, that he didn't think he had to register for Selective Service. And then as he gets this, mushrooming political career, he sends somebody back, and there are many, many people who have looked at that card and believed that the card was worked. Now, the Selective Service data, as you point out, the president appears to have registered September 4th, 1980, a month after his 19th birthday. But the weird thing is that FBI guy who does that investigation and finds out to give him a date, 3 weeks before he applied. Well, explain that one again, Jack.
Well, it's a little complicated, because what happened is, if I understand this correctly, at one point Jimmy Carter and Congress, whoever made that decision, ended the mandatory Selective Service registration, and then they reinstated it. So for people who were born in 19, typically you do it when you turn 18, but for people, the year that Obama was 18, it was not in play. But in the next year, and they mandated that people who were born in 1969 had something like a 6-day window to register. And the official registration date of September 4th, 1980, Obama would have been 19 years old. The numbers work. It's just that you're right. If he had been trying to finesse his way through school as a foreign exchange student, which is possible, because one of the Social Security numbers that show up with him in his Occidental undergraduate days is the 999 number, which is a number typically assigned to foreign exchange students, so they could work and, have and some sort of identity card within that system. But there are reams of things not known, and they could be clarified so easily if someone asked a question. Now, in last year, if you remember, Peter, Les Kinsolving with the WorldNet Daily's White House correspondent raised the question with Robert Gibbs. And Gibbs, of course, laughed him off.
Yep. And
then he called him a birther, and he said, and then, when he asked about the Social Security number, Gibbs says, well, do you believe Obama was born in this country? I mean, he totally changes the subject.
Sure.
The audience joins in with a little chuckling.
Right.
Then I went back and checked Kinsolving's record. Now, he's been a White House correspondent for 30 years. In 1982, he asked then White House Press Secretary Harry Speaks, he said, there is this virus spreading, it's called AIDS, it's sometimes called the gay plague, and it's killing 2/3 of the people who get it. What is the White House doing about this? And then Speaks laughed him off. He said, I don't have it, do you? Ha, 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 ha. I mean, literally laughed him off. In Speaks' case, he was just being ignorant. He just didn't know any better. In Gibbs' case, it was the fact that he didn't want to talk about the subject. He just totally changes the subject, laughs at him, and everyone in the room is,
Sure.
and they move on.
But that's those. I mean, you and I speak about this privately. The story advances almost weekly and sometimes daily. And here's two big turns in the last week. One is the president uses a Social Security number 042-684425, issued to a kid who's dead in Connecticut. The other one is, and this is this guy that I've been dealing with who's a pretty good genealogist, and this guy has done, we ask him to look, and the if you know the birth certificate form that is shown by Bill O'Reilly and Chris Matthews and every Democrat and progressive in the universe, but it has father's race, and it says African. Well, this guy's done research, and he sent me a really interesting letter. Standard certificate of live birth, father's race block 8 and mother's race block 13. Hawaii certificate of live birth contains father's race block 13A and mother's race block 12A. He said, here's the good stuff. And this is from the Hawaiian Public Service, 1961, Public Service Records, Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. What are the options for race? Vital statistics. White, Negro, American Indian, and again, this is bizarre, but it's what you could choose. Chinese, Japanese, Aleut, Eskimo, Hawaiian, part Hawaiian, and other non-white. African is not a choice.
Yeah.
So let me take another pause here and come back and deal with that. So the possibility of African being key punched without first being corrected or sent back to Hawaii, back in 61, despite of their definition of race back then, it was a governmental bureau. Those are the choices. And birth records went through at least 2 checks at county and state level before they went to the Bureau of Vital Statistics for key punching and tabulating. There is no African.
Yeah.
No. Hang on, sir. We'll bring you right back. 303-713-8255. Again, this stuff is fraudulent. It's 6:30 on 6:30 traffic time. Here's Susan. 6:36, 24 minutes before the hour. Again, on our website, KHOW.com. That Sharia video, buried chest deep. Powerful stuff. Donald Trump shoots off now about being a birther. Wolfie, can you play that? This was on CNN, and everybody's having cows on the CNN website. Now, Donald Trump, of course, now another racist. Although, there's nothing in Trump's past that would suggest that. This is the only thing now that they can say about Trump. But, Wolfie, if you could play that, buddy, for this is the Donald.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
And to that controversial question, does he believe the president was born in the USA?
Everybody that even gives any hint of being a birther, a word you didn't use, even a little bit of a hint like, gee, maybe, just maybe this much of a chance, they label them as an idiot. Let me tell you, I'm a really smart guy. I was a really good student at the best school in the country. The reason I have a little doubt, just a little, is because he grew up and nobody knew him. When you interview people, if I ever got the nomination, if I ever decide to run, you may go back and interview people from my kindergarten. They'll remember me. Nobody ever comes forward. Nobody knows who he is until later in his life. It's very strange. The whole thing is very strange.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
All right, 6:37:23 before the hour. Our guest, of course, is Jack Cashill, Deconstructing Obama, the book. Now, does he use the identical number that was issued to Thomas Wood?
No, he uses the next number. He doesn't have, Thomas Wood had his own number. They got it at roughly the same time. Wood got his in 77, and Wood died 5 years later. He and Obama are roughly, Obama's maybe a year older than Thomas Wood. It's
so Wood's number is a 3 or a 4?
It ends in a 4 if Obama's ends in 5.
Okay.
And what makes Wood interesting is that having died, Susan Daniels, the chief investigator on this, was able to get his application. So to see what an application looked like at exactly that time and place, and to place him. She was also able to place the person who follows Obama's number, the one who ends in 6, not as specifically, and she doesn't have the handwritten application, but she knows that he too was the Connecticut number. They all were. All the 042s were. And the question then becomes, what is Obama doing in Connecticut as a 16-year-old? And there is no reasonable explanation. To Trump's point too, Peter, in doing research for my book, I I read a book by a guy named David Mendel, who's a Chicago Tribune reporter, and he wrote his book before Obama was the nominee. So it's a more honest, more interesting book, and he followed Obama in the 2004 Senate campaign, and for the Chicago Tribune, which is a big Obama supporter. And during the course of the campaign, he told the Obama team that he'd like to go to Hawaii to talk to Obama's friends and family in the past. They would not give him permission. Finally, the Tribune came down hard on the Obama team, and they relented, but only as long as a minder went with Mendel, sat in on all of his interviews and recorded them. And Mendel reports, especially with his grandmother, who is still alive then, Madeline Dunham, that she was very anxious the whole time and cut the interview short, and at the end said, "Be kind to my grandson." And same thing happens in New York in 2007. The New York Times goes to Obama and says, we want to do a story about you in New York. This is at the time he's an underdog in the campaign. And like October 2007. And what they write, and what the New York Times write, and it's pathetic to see them put this in print, Obama would not help us give us the name of any students, any classes, any friends, any places he lives. And they let it drop. And Trump's point is well taken. If you got nothing to hide, why all this subterfuge? And what you see in the people who came forward about the campaign are two things, two patterns. One are people who remember nothing or said nothing or would not come forward, and that's a lot of them. And the other people are those who remember much too precisely. And that's the second pattern.
Again, 6:41:19 before the hour. Two turns in the Obama eligibility story. One is the work that was done that the anthropological or racial archetype standpoint on the president's COLB, and it's not correct. The entry for race as African does not exist in 1961 in Hawaii, nor does it exist in the United States for that matter. The other one is the SSN number that the president uses is, again, the next number from a guy, Tom Wood, who died at age 19. Why do you think his death plays out in this at 19? Is it because they could then track that number, some people suggest?
Yeah, right. And Wood has nothing to do with Obama. It's just that having died, according to Susan Daniels, the woman who's the licensed investigator on this case, it allowed her to get access to his basic information.
I follow. Okay.
And so that she could see, and she sent me a copy of it, of his actual handwritten application in 1977. He's the number immediately preceding Barack Obama's, and he's from, I believe the town is Newfield, Connecticut. And
Newington, N-E-W.
Newington, right? Newington, Connecticut, and you can see how it plays out. And she also sent me a copy of his selective card using that same Connecticut Social Security number with an issue date of 1980, but she is not at all confident that that card was actually filled out in 1980.
Do you believe, as some other people believe, that when he's now have this burgeoning political career, that he says, "Oh, I never registered for the draft," and they put some operatives to work on that because there are people that believe that that card's been phonied up as well, or that?
I believe that that's altogether possible. We know this, for instance, is that, and they got caught doing it, is that in 2008, his operatives got caught in the passport file.
Yeah.
And the guy who was responsible for that, Brennan, is now the national security. It was a deputy national security.
Yeah, he's the guy that. No, I know that we've talked about that. He goes in and he, what they say, scrubs or washes the file, right?
Right.
Hang on, sir. We'll come back. We'll come back one more time. The question I have is, and it came up this morning by a caller, and I don't know the outcome of the people in Iowa who were looking in educational records and what happened to them. Our guest, of course, is Jack Cashill. Andy Martin will join us. These are a couple of turns in the story. Another look at Obama's SSN and the fact that the research on the Obama COLB is bogus on anthropological racial archetypes. When the president's COLB is shown, says father's race African, it was not an option. 51 to high today. Traffic time. Here's Susan. 12 before the hour 7, 630 KHW. 51 will be the high today, and it's kind of rain snowing in the city. Andy Martin coming up. Jack Cashill, Deconstructing Obama. Another look at the president's SSN. And, of course, now the information that I guess, the truth about the COLB, where it is bogus, the use of his father's race as African, it wasn't offered and has not been offered. In 1961, there's no way in this world it could have been. Jack, I'm a bunch of callers here want to talk to you as well. So tell me a bit about the people who looked into Iowa and what has happened to them.
That I cannot address as well as you can, Peter. But why don't you share that with?
Well, I don't. I mean, we get Andy Martin coming up. I'll see it. But there are people that were adjudicated. They were in Des Moines. There were 7 or 8 people, and I'm working from memory. But they went in and looked at. They were looking at some records, educational records, and they were. There's belief that they were looking at whether or not Obama got student loans or how he was addressing himself, because Columbia is not on the cheap, and Occidental is not a cheap school.
No.
And of course, as we know, what Gramps worked in a furniture store and Toot worked in a bank. Although there's some people that believe that she accessed some SSNs, but no one knows.
The questions could be answered so easily if someone asked them.
Yeah, he lets a guy go to prison, for God's sake. All right, let's go to Stuart, who waited. Stuart, you're with Jack Cashill. Good morning. Welcome to the show. Stuart.
Oh, hi. I left the radio on in the other room, so
go ahead.
A little bit confusing.
Well, go ahead.
I met Stanley Ann on Maui. She had taken some stuff into a little shop there called the South Seas Trading Post on Front Street, and she had just taken the stuff in just before I arrived, and my friend Joan said, Dan, she says, I use both names. My name is exactly the same as my dad. My dad was one of the Bilderberger group, but we won't go into that right now.
Here we go. All right. So
yeah, right.
All right. So here we go. All right. So you met Stanley Ann Dunham.
I met her, and she was a very lovely woman, I thought.
What year was this, Stuart?
I'm not sure what year it was, but it was just about a week before she went back to Seattle, Washington. I was trying to talk her into staying on Maui.
Why?
And,
why would you try and keep her stay on Hawaii?
I was single.
But she was. Did she have the baby with her?
No.
Had she?
No. Heck no. He was in Harvard, I think.
No,
at the time.
he was still on the island.
Yeah. And I told her that when I was a kid that I had done work for Harvard College Observatory and had been offered an Ivy League education, but I turned it down.
Right.
And,
so you met her, all right? And so
I did meet her.
What was she in your store for?
What was that again?
Why did she come into your store?
Oh, well, it wasn't my store; it was my friend's store.
Right. Well,
and she brought in some things, and one of them was a little wood carving of a Kuan Yin sitting side saddle on a horse, and it was magnificent. It was one of the most magnificent carvings I've ever seen in my life. And my friend Joan called me over. She says, "I've got something I want to show you."
She was 18. She was 18 years of age. Where did she get this carving?
I don't know how old she was.
Oh, she was 18. She was 18 when he was born.
She told me her son was in Harvard. How could she have been 18?
No, her son was not in Harvard.
She did tell me that.
Oh, you're talking. What?
This was in the mid-1980s.
Okay.
All right. Do you want to take a shot at this, Jack?
Yeah, I would say right. And then this is the tricky part of sorting through old memories. Where she was in the mid-1980s is less relevant than. He wasn't at Harvard. Son wasn't at Harvard.
No, he wasn't.
In the 1980s.
No, he wasn't there.
Oh, yes, he could have been. No, he was. He got there in late. He got there in '88. That's possible. But the issue of where she was in the mid '80s isn't particularly relevant. Where she was in say 1961 is the issue.
That's right. Oh, I thought you were talking. What? So, Stuart, put a year on this, would you?
I can't put an exact year on it, except that it was sometime between the mid 1980s and the late 1980s.
How did you know it was Stanley Ann?
I told her my name. She told me her name was Stanley, and I looked at her in disbelief, and she says, "It's Stanley Ann." and she said that she was going back to Seattle, and she said she had a son who was black, and she told me where he was born, and I'm not sure, I can't swear to it, but I think she said he was born in Africa.
Well, all right, sir. I appreciate your call. Thank you. Let's go here. Laura, you're on the show. Let's jump to this. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi.
I wanted to ask about this. Does Jack know of it? According to Obama's nativity story, Obama was in Indonesia in 1969. He was there from 67 to 71. But a mother in Hawaii was going through old photos of her son, Scott, and found a photo of her son, Scott, with Barry, her handwritten on the bottom, Scott and Barry's third grade, 1969.
No, that's exactly right. There is, despite the fact, here's the problem, is that, for instance, in Dream from My Father, Obama claims to have spent 4 years in Indonesia. In Audacity of Hope, he claims to have spent 5 years in Indonesia. In reality, he spent probably about 3 years in Indonesia because he was going back and forth. Yeah. And he did. He was in the third grade class with this little Japanese kid. The photo surfaces, and it's just another big hole in the story. And that's the bizarre. You know, we know more about George Washington's youth than we do about Barack Obama's.
Oh, thank you for that.
Yeah. That picture, that picture's available. Yeah. That picture, and the picture is one of those. Alfred Hitchcock called things like that the MacGuffin.
MacGuffin, right? It shows up, and then the mystery that has to be explained.
Yeah, and you can't explain it. There's so many parts of this that you can't. It's the inability to explain it. You just simply can't. It's in spite of the Chris Matthewses of the world and Bill O'Reillys and the rest of these guys. They are never going to tell you. And this is the most recent. Is that the COLB, the Obama so-called birth certificate, is bogus because when you see father's race, African, it was not adopted. It wasn't ever used. It was from an anthropological or even a racial archetype standpoint. But the state of Hawaii, or the United States of America for that matter, never used that term.
Jack, could I ask you a question about that COLB? Down at the bottom, it specifically says this is a prima facie evidence. And that's a specific legal term for it. On the face of it, this could be true, but it needs to be backed up by documentation if you go into court. Doesn't that in itself make the COLB suspect?
Well, yeah, it's definitely suspect. In fact, yesterday I was watching the clip of when Les Kinsolving asked Gibbs about the Social Security number from last year, and Gibbs says, he talks about the Social Security number because I've seen it myself. He goes, I'm the one who posted the birth certificate online. And then Kinsolving says, you didn't post the birth certificate. There's no hospital. There's no doctor.
There's no witness.
Not a birth certificate. Yeah. And they don't care. I mean, they're just using language they just have to use so little effort to dissemble in front of the mass press corps that they're not even breaking a sweat yet. Or they may be breaking a sweat privately, not publicly.
The Standards Certificate of Live Birth contains the father's race on Block 8 and the mother's race on Block 13. Hawaii's Certificate of Live Birth contains the father's race, Block 13A, mother's race, Block 12A. See the difference in what's being presented versus what the long form is about.
So now, is this an amended COLB?
No, I think it's manufactured. I mean, I think that they got the form and they had some incredibly politically correct person who could not use the words colored or Negro. It's impossible, and they just wrote in African, thinking it was a PC term to use. Jack, what do you think?
I think the whole thing was manufactured also, and Hawaii is a one-party state essentially. You know? I mean, there's one Republican state senator in the whole state.
But
they had a Republican governor, but she was complicit, Lynn Ringel. They could get away with this stuff.
Sure.
And running for president.
Sure. You get a form and make up a form but again, the differences are incredible. The Certificate of Live Birth, father's race is Block 8 and the mother's race is Block 13. Hawaii's Certificate of Live Birth contains father's race, Block 13, mother's race, Block 12A. That's the one you have to see. Now, here's the good stuff, is in race and color, births in the United States, which would include Hawaii, are classified for vital statistics into white, Negro, American Indian, Chinese, Japanese, Aleut, Eskimo, Hawaiian, part Hawaiian, combined, and other non-white. African is not a choice, has never been. And so the Census Bureau captures statistical data. 1961, it would have said Negro, possibly colored, but to a high degree of probability, like 99%, it would have said Negro.
Yeah.
And plus, he wasn't there when the kid was born.
Well, obviously,
Right,
it's craziness. Laura, thank you. Hey, Jack, thanks, man. I know you got some work to do. I'll talk to you first part of the week. Thank you.
Okay, super, Peter.
Safe,
Anytime.
man. Thank you, bro. Thank you, man. All right.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.